Hi everyone, thanks for joining me for another Broken Blitz review, and thank you to Jordan B for coming up with the name. This is Ginkgopolis, which I've only had the chance to play in solo mode because we're still in lockdown and I can't find a decent online method to play it. But with this one, I wanted to talk about it whilst it was in solo mode, because I think you get a good feel for the game even from that mode, and then when I get a chance to play it multiplayer, I certainly will, slight spoiler alert, but then I'll be able to do a follow-up video, or maybe talk about it on the podcast or a Q&A to tell you what I think of it in multiplayer form. But Ginkgopolis is a city builder game from Pearl Games. Now, Pearl Games tend to not make a big deal of their releases. You don't tend to hear much about them, but then they come out and then they kind of get a cult following. And to be fair, deserved. Pearl Games have released some pretty good stuff over time, and this is one of those that's kind of slipped through under the radar. It's not a brand new game, it's just recently come back into print, and people have said like, oh, have you tried this one? You gotta try it, you gotta try it. It's like, fine, give me a review, copy please, Asmodee. I want to try this game. It's by Xavier Georges and Pearl Games, and yeah, it's a really good game. Basically what you do is that you start off with a 3x3 grid of these building tiles, and you build up the cityscape by expanding it outwards, but also by building extra floors, so it kind of creates a semi-3D look. Now, first off, the theme is kind of neither here or there. Yes, you are technically building up a city, and there's different buildings, but it's just basically blue, red, or yellow, and the blues get you one resource, like extra tiles, yellow get you points, and the red gets you these resource cylinders that you need in order to control various buildings. Apart from that, it's about as bare bones theme-wise for a city builder as you can get, so think of this more as an abstract game. But the crux of it is down to these cards, these ones here. You've got two main types. You've got letters for the urbanization tokens, which are essentially based on these tokens that you have like around the outside of the grid to begin with. But then you also have, for every single building numbered 1 to 20 in each of the three colors, you have the respective card for that building. So you've got, for example, a 2 red, 2 blue, 3 yellow, and then in this deck, because this is effectively the starter deck for the game, you've got a lot more. You've got a ton of these other cards that you can pick from. And what exactly is the point of this? Well, the idea is that you play a card from your hand. You have, in the multiplayer game, 4 cards, you choose one to play, and then you pass the rest, you draft them around the other players, and then you replenish them up to 4 in a hand. With the solo mode, essentially what you do is that you draw 3 cards from the deck for yourself and 1 face down for an AI opponent. The AI opponent basically just keeps building and building and building and acquires points and control of districts, as per the multiplayer rules, but you don't draft with them. It's just a case that they get 1 card, you don't know what it is until it happens, and you get 3 cards, and you have to pick one of them to use and discard the other 2. So it's like, cool, you've got some options on your turn. You play through the game until the endgame trigger is met, which is the same as in the multiplayer version. So have we used up all the tiles? Has the AI used up all their resources? Have you used up all your resources? But other than that, it basically plays very much like the multiplayer game. And the idea is that as you put more buildings out, like you construct more buildings, you start off with the starter deck, which doesn't have, it only has the letter token cards and the basic buildings in there. And the buildings have like special powers it could give you, like, if I play this card and if this card's in front of me and I construct a floor, then I get a point. If I play this card and build outside of the city, I get a tile. It's very simple stuff like that. But when you build the new buildings, the cards from the other set get put into this deck, and when it replenishes, you effectively shuffle it all together. So it kind of is it's not deck building per se, but the communal deck basically builds up as the game progresses with the new buildings. And when you get these upgraded buildings, you have stuff like, you get a point at the end of the game for every resource cylinder you have on red buildings. You get 9 points, flat out points. You get a resource every time you expand. You get 2 points for every card you have laid out in front of you, because when you build a building, you discard the card. But when you construct a floor, you keep the card in front of you, and so people can't necessarily build on that again, but you now have whatever bonus it has in front of you. So there's a cool little multi-use card aspect to this. but there's definitely a lot of decisions you gotta make in terms of what it is you're doing with these cards. Now, sadly, you don't get to use these leaders in the solo mode. These are predominantly for multiplayer. They give you some bonuses if you play certain cards, and they give you like a starting resource setup. But sadly, not in the solo mode, so we're going to put them away. But I was genuinely surprised by this game. I thought, ooh, is this going to be a little bit overhyped? I don't know. But at first, I was a little bit like, hang on, how does the rules work? Because the rulebook is decent, but there is a fair bit of text, and you've got 3 different actions you can do, but whether you play a building card or an urbanization card makes a bit of a difference. And so at first I was kind of like, hang on, what exactly is going on here? And bear in mind, I tried to learn the solo game, which has some minor differences to the multiplayer game. But thankfully, you've got a very good summary on the back, very good summary that gives you the text for the setup, the game turn, all the actions you can do in text and pictorial setup, as well as some decent explanation for the rules themselves and a small bit for the solo mode at the back. But it took me a game to click with what was going on. About half a game, I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'll go with it, you know, what on earth. You don't need these screens, unlike in the multiplayer game, but the screens have like the pictorial representation of the actions. But if you read this without fully understanding the rules, you'd be like, I still don't quite get what's going on. So I do recommend using the summary on the back. But, you know, it's nice that they're on the screen for multiplayer sake. Now, as I was playing it, I thought, I still don't get what I'm doing. What exactly am I supposed to be doing well? Halfway through the game, something snapped in my head, and I suddenly got it. It's like, so that scores, oh! And as soon as I got that realization, everything fell into place, including the enjoyment for this game, which was pretty high. Gotta admit, yes, there's no theme in this. I treat this as a complete abstract, but it looks gorgeous. I mean, it's got very nice artwork in this. You know, this is a very well-produced game with one minor annoyance. The score tokens that you get during the game for doing certain things, there's not enough of them. And they need bigger denominations. You have a lot of these tokens to work with, and you quickly run out of 10s. You really could use a 50 in this game by the time you get to the end, and that's one other flaw I do have. The scoring takes quite a bit of time, even in solo mode, because you've got to total up like all the cards you've got to total up the tokens you've acquired during the game, but then you've also got district control, where if you've got multiple of the same color in an area, you count up all the resources that are on it by players. Whoever's got the most scores this many points, whoever has the second most scores this many points. You got to do it for every district.
Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Scoring takes a while. This really could use a companion app or a score pad. I think these tokens just make it a little bit fiddly on the scoring front. But that minor blemish aside, what you do in the middle with these tiles, building up that grid, deciding if you want to build an extra floor, replace somebody's resource tokens with your own, because it gives them extra points if you do that, but then you now control the district. And if you play the building card for that, you can get whatever the resources it produces. Like, ooh, I've got a 3-floor high building here that produces 3 tiles. Okay, I'll play that building card. I now get 3 tiles into my personal supply. Better than doing, say, this action or this action. It really came into its own as it finally clicked, and I got really into it. You know, I'm drawing 3 cards, seeing all these new cards come up, and I'm really there thinking, well, if I replace this 12, then I need to put a higher number building down, because you sacrifice points and resources if you don't put a higher number down on the buildings. And I'm thinking, oh, but if I replace that, I'm only getting so many points, but I really need to play this card because I can't let the AI get it, because if they do, they'll replace it with that district, which means they now control that district, which is not good. But the endgame bonus I really want on this card, I want to construct a floor with this so that I can have extra points at the end for blue resources. It's like, with 3 cards, you've got some very tough decisions to make. But the rounds are quite quick. Once you've made your decision, you go, right, I'm going to play this card, discard those 2. You then take whatever face down card the AI had, flip it, resolve it. Again, they don't care about resources and that. They simply just construct or build. And then you just deal out 3 more cards to yourself, 1 more to the AI, and rinse repeat. When the deck runs out, exactly like in a multiplayer game, you just get all the cards that you have got to add to the deck, shuffle it all together, and there you go. I will say on that front though, these construction meeples, they're a good aid to remember what it is you're supposed to be adding to the deck. Do not forget to put these out, trust me, because if you get too into the game and you forget to add these to the tiles that you've recently added, you will quickly forget what it is you're supposed to add to the deck, and that slows the game down a lot. You need to be on the ball with these construction meeples. So as a quick summary, I really enjoyed this solo mode. I played it 3 times in a row when I got it. I played it once, was like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this game really that great? Clicked, then played it 2 more times after that, and I played it again this morning. It's really solid. This has got me very eager to try out the multiplayer mode in this, where you're drafting cards around other players. I'm a little worried about how long the game will take in terms of duration though when you start adding more players. Let me know in the comments what your multiplayer experiences are like. But I will get round to it when lockdown ends, and I hope to do a follow-up video on the multiplayer side, maybe just talk about it in the podcast or a Q&A and go into more detail there. But I don't think that I'm going to hate the multiplayer side. It maybe I'll want to play it solo more often than multiplayer, but honestly, I found this to be good fun. Relatively low complexity, maybe 1 game just to get your head around the rules to begin with, but a really good amount of depth, a card deck that evolves as the game progresses, tactical rather than strategic, because you can't start the game by going, right, I'm going to focus on yellow buildings and that's my strategy. Well, no, because you might not get control of those. You might not get the cards for those. You might not get the tiles for those. You have to decide at the time what your tactic option is. You know, I draw 3 cards and they're all yellow. Right, well, I gotta do something with the yellow this round. But then you find some red and blue tiles, you think, well, hang on, if I cover that building, yes, I lose a resource because I'm changing the color, but then that means that district now becomes isolated, it doesn't score, and this red district becomes bigger, which I'm controlling, so I get more points that way. Lots of these cool choices that you make with this game. Add to that the cool production value with these very thick, nicely illustrated tiles, you know, a decent set of cards, which aren't the, strongest cards in the world, but I maybe recommend sleeving these, you know, but there's not that many cards to sleeve, and I probably do recommend you do it because you're going to be handling these a lot and you're going to be shuffling them into a deck, so maybe get some sleeves. I know I've recently acquired some, but I'm really keen to try this out more in multiplayer. This was a hidden gem for me. It went completely under my radar to begin with. I never heard much about it, no one really talked about it, so I just kind of ignored it when it came out. But then suddenly, as it came back in a print, you know, people started mentioning it again. People are sort of whispering on reviews of that. Have you tried Ginkgopolis? You really should try it if you like city building games. It's like, yeah, okay, the theme in this is not really a city builder. It's pretty abstracted. But when I saw Pearl Games was the publisher, I just thought, they have done some pretty surprising stuff. I really should give this one a look. And I am glad I did. So far, just from a solo mode perspective, I'm giving this... Does it warrant that level? Does it warrant it? Come on. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's that solid. I really did enjoy this one. I'm giving it a solid 9 out of 10 with a seal of distinction for the solo mode only. You know, it gave me a really good, interesting puzzle game with some tactical options and a little bit of like tension with what the AI does. Now, will it remain as a 9 after I've played the multiplayer game and considered the game as a whole? Who knows? But at worst, I could see this going down to an 8. So maybe not quite distinction level, but still great game level. But if the multiplayer turns out to be as good as, if not better than the solo mode, this could remain as a 9, possibly even go up to a 10. Really was surprised by this little hidden gem. Definitely recommend you give it a try, Ginkgopolis. And that's it for this Broken Blitz review. So thank you for joining me here. If you like this kind of format, let me know. As I say, I'm going to cherry pick what sort of games I feature in these Blitz reviews, but it's good to talk about these games, even though I can't talk about them in the 6-hour plus edit version of the detail format. But this is not a replacement. You can check out my Merv Heart of the Silk Road detail format review, and I'm working to get games like Whistle Mountain played and Maglev Metro, and I will probably... Maglev Metro might be a Blitz review, but certainly I want to do a full detail review of Whistle Mountain. So, like I say, it's just a supplementary sideline to the detail reviews, just to allow me to not burn out like crazy. You know, bear in mind, this is a hobby, not my full-time job. So, that's it for me. I'll see you on the next video. And remember, as always, check out the description in the... for the code for zatu.co.uk, where you can get 5% discount on all your games. Check out my other content, including my recent collaborations I've been doing with Board Game Ramblings and Ryan and Bethany Board Games. There's more on the way, and it's going to be really good to do them. But until next time, as always, don't forget, it's only a game. Bye for now.